Hi again, and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer. I am Reverend Laura, and every week I'm here inviting in an inspirational guest to talk about their idea of prayer, what prayer means for them, how prayer has inspired them, how they use prayer to navigate their lives and to commune with the divine. And this week, yes, an amazing, gorgeous super guest is waiting in the wings. We are aligned. She is here. And I'm going to say a few words right now about Dr. Judy Morley. Dr. Judy is our super guest today here on the Cosmic Prayer as a speaker, a coach, a leader, a change agent, and she has been helping people to live better lives for over 30 years. Yes, as a speaker and author, she has written works and worked with corporations and entrepreneurs, and she's taken companies through mergers and catastrophic losses and personal shakeups. And as an entrepreneur, she's founded businesses, closed them, and seen the good and bad and the ugly of startups. This is powerful. And also, Dr. Judy has education, a vast education. And I have just actually she shared with me, she has a PhD in history. So all of these experiences have helped her to develop a method to help her and her clients to lead better lives. And this is what this is all about, living a better life, living a more fulfilled experience. And I am grateful and thankful and appreciate you for being here right now, Dr. Judy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Laura. Lovely to be here.
It's wonderful to be here with you, and you look very cozy there in your
yes. It's a little chilly. It's about 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So
wow, yeah, it's getting there here as well. And I'm excited that you're here, and that I'm here in the south of the UK, you're in Pennsylvania, and feeling this same feeling wherever we are, that we are connected as one. And I know that for me, prayer and affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, has really allowed me to develop myself as a spiritual human being. And I'm really interested in how prayer works for you.
How long do we have?
About 50 minutes.
Because there's no short answer to that.
Okay.
No,
that's
prayer, of course, I would not be, one of the things my bio doesn't say is I'm also, like you, Reverend Laura, a minister for Science of Mind. And I wouldn't be that if I didn't believe that prayer was powerful. I think one of the most profound experiences that I had with prayer comes years ago. 24 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. And at the time, I was supposed to have 6 months of chemotherapy, a bone marrow transplant, and then 6 more months of chemotherapy. I was only 33 years old. I had a 4-year-old daughter, and I really did not want to have any of that. Yeah. But I also was new. I was new to this idea of affirmative prayer. I didn't really understand it. I'd been going to a center for spiritual living at the time I lived in Denver, Colorado, and I was going to Mile High Church, and there was a beautiful being of light there named Reverend Marjorie Staum, who started praying with me. And I did not understand any of the tenets of prayer. I didn't understand any of the science behind it. I couldn't tell you the 5 steps of prayer. I didn't really know rationally anything about it. But what I knew was that after I sat with Reverend Marjorie and had prayer, that I felt better. I felt healthier. I felt more energetic. I felt like things were shifting. And thanks to that experience, both with praying with Reverend Marjorie and then her teaching me how to pray on my own, I ended up only having 6 months of chemotherapy. I never did the bone marrow transplant. I never did the next 6 months of chemotherapy. After 4 months of chemotherapy, there was no evidence of disease. So I finished up the last 2 months just because I was still a little scared. I wasn't quite confident enough to not do that, but I declined the bone marrow transplant. I declined the second 6 months, and that was 24 years ago. So I've been well and healthy ever since. I saw my daughter grow up. And so that was really, that was the big aha moment for me that this stuff maybe really works, you know? So,
Yes. Oh, wow.
yeah. I had another much smaller moment that actually had a bigger impact on me though, because it was crazy. You know, we talk about the mind body connection. My story just addressed the mind body connection. But this little piece, I think, is what really did it. Through my 6 months of chemotherapy, I lost all my hair, of course. Now, before I had chemotherapy and lost my hair, I'd had a little bald spot on the back of my head. It was just a little bald spot. I was always very self-conscious about it, always tried to brush my hair over it. And it wasn't very big, maybe about the size of, I don't know about UK coins, but about the size of a silver dollar in the US. So I had chemotherapy, lost all my hair. And as it started growing back, I noticed that there was no hair growing in that area again. And I thought, okay, if the law says that everything in this world is just an effect of our thought, and if I don't like having that bald spot, then I'm going to visualize the cells of my body creating hair follicles in that place and growing in. And I did that every day for maybe a month. And when my hair finally got long enough to go see a hairstylist, like, 6 weeks, it was just barely, I just barely had a crew cut, but I was like, do something. I can't wear the wig anymore. Make me look cute. Do something. The hairstylist that I've been seeing for years goes, oh my gosh, that chemotherapy was amazing. Your hair's growing back in that place where you didn't have any hair.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, no, that wasn't chemotherapy. That was prayer.
Yes.
And so as odd as it sounds, here I survived cancer on the power of prayer, and that should be my big aha moment. But that little tiny moment when I realized that I had that prayer, not me, the small s self, but me, the large s self, had so much control over the world of effects that I could literally grow hair back on my head. I think that changed it all for me.
Yes. And why am I amazed? Really, I needn't be amazed. If I believe that prayer works, then of course it's going to work. And I think it's so vital what you've just brought forwards is that you were intentionally focused upon that. And you knew that was where you wanted to see the demonstration, another demonstration. And it can be easy to get, I feel, I'm speaking for me, lazy sometimes with prayer and just think, and not actually really zone in. And this is proof of that, demonstrating the law and demonstrating that everything is in effect. So what happened after that? Where was your faith? How did that expand or not after that experience?
Oh, obviously well, in some ways, and this is interesting, in some ways, the success of prayer is a double-edged sword. And here's what I mean by that. Obviously, prayer always works. And it's fabulous to know and to believe in a philosophy and to know that there are laws out there that say that we can be, do, and have anything we want, and that prayer is the mechanism for it. The double-edged sword is that then when you don't get what you want and your prayers aren't answered, there is a tendency, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, to point the finger back at me and blame myself. What am I doing wrong? Because the law always works. The law is perfect. What am I doing wrong? What belief do I still have? What am I not releasing? What am I praying and then, planting the seed and then immediately digging it up to see if it's growing?
Right.
And so that's what I mean by a double-edged sword, is that it can lead to some self-recrimination if you're not careful. I've certainly been down that path, but certainly after that, I absolutely realized that nothing is impossible. Nothing. Except the only limit is our own belief. That is the only limit.
So what happens then in that instance that you're talking about, when we think it doesn't work, because it's always working to the degree that we believe. So what happens then? What do we do? What's the action step then without going down that path of, this is my fault, I'm not doing it properly, I'm not a good prayer, I haven't got enough faith.
Right. I'm not doing it right.
I'm not doing it right. Everyone else is doing it right. Why aren't I doing it? What's wrong with me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I figured that one out. No, I'm kidding. That is probably still my greatest challenge. But I think that, what we need to do, what works every time, is to distract ourselves. I think that's the other thing we forget. I think when we get into prayer, we feel like there's an action to it.
Okay.
Like we have to be in control of it. We have to be there praying every minute. But, Ernest Holmes tells us, and every great spiritual teacher tells us, that the power of prayer is when you let go.
Yes.
When you are so convinced that it's done that you don't think about it anymore. So generally, for me, what I found in my life is when I'm praying for something and it's not working, there are generally two reasons. One is that I just have a belief that is so deeply buried that I don't even know it's operating.
Mm-hmm.
And on that, you just keep at it, because the belief, every time you pray and a belief blocks it, another layer of the onion is peeled back and you get closer to understanding what that belief is. So that you just keep going. The other reason that prayer doesn't work is when we pray from a place of lack and hope that the prayer will fill the lack in us.
Okay.
But we need to pray from the place, we need to pray from what we want, not for what we want.
So we're praying from the infinite, from first cause, not from the effect.
Correct.
Because when we're praying from the effect, we're actually just entwining ourselves with the lack and limitation of the effect and how it's demonstrated itself already.
Exactly. That's why I always, I think that when I had my own spiritual center, and I know that sometimes my congregation would get frustrated with me because they would come to me with wonderful social justice programs that they would want to do. And I would say that we would sponsor them as soon as they were right with it. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, because all you're seeing is problem, 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 problem.
Yeah.
And that's not how Source sees it. All Source sees is love, 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 love. So when you can come at this situation from love, 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 we'll start. But as long as you're like, we have to fix this, this is broken, there's not enough, people are starving, there's violence in the world, whatever, we're focused on the problem. And no amount of prayer focused on the problem can fix it.
Yes.
The prayer has to come from the solution.
Yes. And it is that the Einstein quote that we I see, and when we can't expect a new effect working from the same place. We have to be in another consciousness, to know that love, 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 love. You're the second person that I've been with in the last few days that said love, 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 love. I love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
That is funny. So yes, it's being an activator, I think, rather than an activist. For me, that's feels so let's activate the love rather than be an activist against something. Even if we say we're for it, it can have that edge of, I don't think this is good enough, and so I've got to change it.
Right. And I use the example of things in the world, but that happens with us. I'm working on doing some social media posts for right after the first of the year, because I like to take much of December off. I'm a Christmaholic, so I like to take much of the month off. But obviously the idea of New Year's resolutions has come up. And I don't particularly like New Year's resolutions because of this very thing. There's a problem that we're focused on, and we're focused on the problem so intently that it doesn't matter what we say
Mm-hmm.
or do or pray about, if our focus is on the problem, we're going to get more of the problem. So, the big New Year's resolutions are, I want to lose weight. Well, if you're focused on, I need to lose weight, I'm overweight, I have too much weight, I shouldn't have eaten so much, I need less weight, you're going to get more weight. So you really need to focus on affirmations instead. And that's really the portion of the prayer that's important. I operate at my ideal body size.
Yes. And what about tuning into the feelings as well? So that the prayer then becomes a feeling rather than an outline of what we think it needs to be in order for it to fulfill the demonstration.
Yes, of course. And that is exactly what thinking about and focusing on the problem does. It's not only the thought, because the thought creates the feeling. So when you think about and focus on the problem, what you're creating is those feelings of lack, problems, limitation. Something's wrong here. That's what we started with. Oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. So you have to focus on the feeling that it's already done. That's what Ernest Holmes calls embodiment. You have to embody that it's already done. I have right now, and this is just spiritual law.
Yes.
I have everything I need. I have all the money, all the resources, all the love, all of the connections, all of the creativity, all of the energy. I have everything I need right now. If I'm not experiencing it, it doesn't mean that there's lack out there. It means there's a block in here. Mm-hmm. So I just have to get to the place and shift my own consciousness and my own perspective to the place where I can feel it. And then it starts showing up in my life.
Yes. And then for me, that takes strength, to feel it, because sometimes I feel it for the moment, and then an hour later, I'm not feeling it. I'm feeling something else.
Nobody feels it all the time. That's why when Jesus said you have to pray without ceasing, that's what he meant.
Yes.
You feel it and you're feeling great, and then something in the world happens that pulls you out of the feeling. Time to pray again, time to go back and get to that feeling. Don't just allow the conditions of the world. Don't be of the world and allow those conditions to go running rampant.
Lives. Yes.
Yeah, running amok with you. Bring yourself back, and take another 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 hours, whatever it takes to get back to the feeling. And I think that truly the ascended masters walk through life and are always in that feeling. But those are the Jesuses and the Buddhas. I just want to do it more often than not.
And in a lot of main religions, they teach to pray constantly, pray 5 times a day, pray 3 times a day. It's something that we keep going. It's a practice rather than a special event thing once in a while.
Correct.
Yes. And so the piece with spiritual mind treatment is that we are not praying to a God that's outside of us, that's transcendental and not immanent. We're praying to this God that is everywhere, as everything, all power, all knowing. So how, when something is happening, I think maybe you're the wrong person to ask this, because you really proved it with what you used prayer for initially. How did you do that when you were given this diagnosis? And how did you gain that strength to believe that this could be a way for you to transmute this and see and be it differently for your life? Because that takes a lot of internal courage and grace and strength to do that.
It does. And I'll say that it was an ongoing process. 24 years later, I say it's pretty complete, but it didn't, like my last chemotherapy, I didn't go, yay, this is never happening to me again. It took several years even after that for me to not have a moment every time I got a sore throat or my energy was low to go, oh no, and I would have to go back in. But, I think for me, and I think a lot of people are like this, humans like to be in control. That's one of the hardest things about prayer is that when you do affirmative prayer, spiritual mind treatment, you have to let go. It's the biggest step, is letting go. And we want to be in control. So one of the things that really helped me was with the prayer, I recognized that I could guide my thoughts in a more productive manner than thinking about the possible negative outcomes. You know, I had a 3-year-old daughter, and in one of my more morbid moments, I like to do needlework. And so she was 3 years old. I went and I bought a stocking kit to do cross stitch with her name on it, so that if I died, she would have something to remember me by, since she was only 3. So I went to those morbid places, of course. But what I found was that whenever I was tempted to go there, I would direct my thoughts from that outcome to actually giving instructions to my body.
Okay.
I would direct my thoughts to give instructions to my body. Now, because I had a physical ailment, it was easy. I gave instructions to my white blood cells to go through like little Pac-Men and get any cancer cells in my blood and eat them. And I sat down and did that 3 times a day, every day for 6 or 7 months. And whenever I would get fear after I was done with my treatment that perhaps it was coming back or maybe something was wrong, I would sit down and do it again. In less tangible circumstances, like a physical ailment, I just sit down and I stop thinking about the situation altogether. I saw something on good old Facebook. It said, weak people seek revenge. Strong people seek conquest. Wise people seek to ignore. And I think that you have to ignore the condition, because if you want to feel good, let's say it's money. You don't have enough money. And you got a bill, or maybe it's your monthly bills, maybe it's your house payment, you can't pay it. Well, if you sit down 3 times a day and go, I know I can pay my house payment. I know I can pay my house payment. I know I can pay my house payment. That's not prayer. That's called concerted worrying. You know? So, because the feeling that you're evoking is that worry. So you have to ignore. You have to sit down and remember the time when you had plenty of money. Or if that's never been your experience, use your imagination and imagine what it would be like to have plenty of money. Not how you're going to get money, not how you're going to go scramble for it. What does it feel like to have plenty of money? Focus on that, and then do your prayer and go do something else. Right. Go for a walk and ignore the situation.
Because there's this also, I think, in Science of Mind and Spirit, there is this idea of treat and move your feet.
Move your feet.
And sometimes for me, that can be, okay, I've treated and now I have to do something. It has to be inspired action, of course. Well, however, for some, it's just do something.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. For you, it has to be inspired action. Seems like the obvious choice, but not for everyone.
No, it's not always included. For me either.
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this. Something I've been working on is, I'm an entrepreneur, and as with all things in entrepreneurship, it ebbs and flows. Money ebbs and flows. And so we're coming into the holiday season, and we are in an ebb right now. It'll turn around. We're not in any danger. But I was thinking this morning, my initial instinct was I have to go get a job. I don't want a job. I have no desire to have a job. Yeah. I've had many jobs. I've been many things. I've been an executive in lots of organizations. I can do it very well. I do not want a job. So the treat and move your feet, what some people would hear is, well, I'm going to pray that things turn around the business. And in the meantime, I'm going to go get a job because I have to move my feet.
Right.
But that's not what I want.
No.
what I want is the inspiration to maybe create a new course or
Yes.
bring in new clients or
Yes.
things like that. That would be fun and life affirming and exciting.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to move my feet until I get the inspiration on what direction to move it.
Yes.
If I just say, oh, I better move my feet and go get a job, all I'm doing now is reinforcing an old pattern that I'm actually praying to get rid of.
Yes. So that's coming from the effect rather from praying into and with and from the divine, where all possibilities, all possibilities are there and here already and now. Why do we go back to those old possibilities?
That's, that is the $64,000 question. Who knows? It's somewhere in between. I think, it's partially race consciousness. Oh, you need money, go get a job. That's so ingrained in race consciousness. And it's fear-based, that seems like something I can control. This other stuff is beyond my control.
Yes.
And so I think it's a lot of layers, but it's like any other skill. It takes practice to break the habit. Just like, if you ever bit your nails or, had any other bad habit, it takes awareness that it's there and practice to get rid of it.
To unlearn it and get rid of it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love this conversation. I love where it's going. It's right in my kind of field of interest. And so Dr. Judy, you're here, and for anybody and everybody that's watching and listening, and if you're on YouTube or Facebook, then welcome here. Welcome to this conversation. We're talking about prayer. We're talking about Dr. Judy's idea of prayer, and she's sharing right now about how overcoming situations or working through situations that we think are maybe even be fatal or may even be life-threatening, and that we can use prayer as part of our practice. And so it's a great conversation because you've covered health, you're covering wealth. I'd love you to talk about, or if you're inspired, to talk about relationships as well with this, and how we can really use prayer with, first of all, with our relationship with that faith, with the divine, as we can commune with ourselves, and then with our partners, husbands, children, in what they may bring into our lives, knowing we're all one. How do you use prayer for conscious communication with others?
When I first found Science of Mind, I would sit in the services and I would listen to the talks, and I never thought of myself. I thought of a million other people that should hear this.
Okay.
And if anyone listening to that is guilty of this, stop it.
I'm here.
Yes, because I think it's, again, human nature to think that if only that other person would do it differently, we'd have a better relationship. And that's never true. Never true. Now, that's not to say that if someone's in an abusive relationship or a dysfunctional relationship or something that hurts you, it's not to say you stay in it. But it is to say that you can't change the other person. So what prayer is always for is from what you want. So if what I want in a relationship is a peaceful, powerful, supportive relationship that affirms who I am and uplifts me and supports me in any of my endeavors and everything I want to do, if that's what I want, then that's what I pray for. And if the person I'm with isn't that, we cannot be afraid to just bless them and love them and say, you're fabulous, but you are not what I want. Just like me not wanting to find a job. Jobs are great, but not what I want right now. Well, that partner might be a great partner for someone else. But again, in the race consciousness, there's such taboo about ending a relationship, and there's such praise about suffering through and sticking it out and working through until you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. Now, if it's, I actually had a congregant who had an issue with their child and grandchild, mainly with the child who was keeping this person from her grandchild. And she wanted to do a lot of things out here in the world of effects. She wanted to make phone calls and write letters and do email and try to do things on Facebook. And, my advice to her was that we just pray on it.
Right.
And we just prayed every day for the grandchild's highest and best good. We just prayed every day together. I mean, I put it in my prayer work. She had it in her prayer work. And we were together. We prayed together for this grandchild's highest and best good. And I told this woman, you need to let go. If you never see your grandchild again, you have to be okay with that, because love transcends physical space.
Right.
And that was hard work for this person. After about 4 months, I get a phone call from a young woman. Sounds like she's about 18 years old. And she asks if I know the name of her grandmother. And I say, yes. And she says, I'm looking for her. I want to reestablish a relationship with her. And I saw her on the church's website. Now, here's the amazing thing, Reverend.Laura. I went through the church's website. There's no picture of this woman anywhere on the church's website. Couldn't find her. Didn't have a picture. All the group pictures, this woman was never in it. So somehow this young lady was guided.
Yeah.
We don't know how, but we do know how. But we don't know how to find my spiritual center, to find my phone number on the website,
right,
to call me. I got her phone number. I called this woman, and their relationship came together. Not because of anything we did out there.
No.
Just prayer. Because what we have to understand is this energy runs through all people. We are all connected. And so in that connection, people know, even if they aren't rationally, consciously aware, they get that impulse. So the only way to manage relationships is to manage ourselves.
Yes.
And if you have a partner or a family member that's problematic, or that the relationship is difficult, it's not them.
No.
So, I mean, it might also be them, but you can't do their work. You can't do their work for them. No one else can do your push-ups for you. Only you can do your own push-ups.
And this is important. And this, not everyone, not all of us want to hear this, because for a lot of us, me, sometimes, that's also a programming. Blame the outside, judge the effect, blame what's going on, fix it by fixing someone else. And taking responsibility is something that it's a grown-up thing to do, isn't it? And
yes, it's very adult. Yes,
very adult. You have to say, okay, this is mine to do. And I think for me, that's been a really beautiful piece about being fully surrendered to spiritual practice and prayer and being in spiritual community, that it shows me who I am and who I can be, who I'm not being, and who I would like to be, and how I'd like to evolve. And prayer gives me that opportunity to really to be kind to myself at the same time. So how do you, when that happens, I mean, have you seen changes? I have a demonstration that's happened for me and my daughter. Prayer shifted something over 2 years immensely. And I can really say I didn't do a thing out there, wherever out there is. I didn't do a thing. And then she called me 2 years later. It took its time. And I really love what you've just shared, that you were found and not the grandmother. She came through you. She felt safe to come through you and find you and call you as the intermediary. Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I however it works, I was so blown away by it, but, I was glad, and I was happy, of course, to be part of it. But yeah, I think that's such a profound thing. The other lesson I've learned about relationships, and it's the F word, forgiveness.
I didn't. Sorry, I put 2 and 2 together and made 18.
I think most people do. That's why I say it that way. But I think that's part of what forgiveness is so misunderstood. I had a minister years ago from Mile High Church, Dr. Roger Teal. He did a whole talk on forgiveness, and he said something. He may not have even realized he said it, because he almost said it in an offhand way, but he says, when you forgive someone, you let them go. He says, now, this doesn't mean that you go back into that situation and let them do it to you again. And that struck me, because I always thought forgiveness meant you stick it out, to what we were saying earlier about relationships. You stick it out, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how awful the other person is. You be the bigger person and forgive, but you stick it out and stay there. And that piece of wisdom from Dr. Roger was so huge to me, because it's given me such a different perspective on forgiveness. I mean, I can legitimately say, this hurt me. I don't want to live my life like this. I'm out of here. Now, I forgive you. I don't have any anger to you or resentment to you. I release you to your higher good. Where if I said, this hurt me, I don't like it, but I'm going to stay here and expect you to be different. That's kind of, they say in 12-step, that's the definition of insanity. Right. To continue doing the same behavior and expect something to change. And I think that is a common misconception in relationships, and why we want other people to change, is because we haven't taken that responsibility to recognize that everything in our life we've either asked for or allowed. Right. And so if we're allowing it, we're responsible. Yes.
And so to get to that place, using prayer as a deep practice, where responsibility actually becomes an enjoyable verb rather than
blame.
Yeah. That in itself, do you believe, can be really self-empowering?
Oh my goodness. I learned when I had cancer that responsibility is the ability to respond. Yeah. That's all it is. It's response ability. So you can't respond to anything if you don't take responsibility, because you can't respond to what's outside of your control.
Yes.
So all it is the ability to respond. There's an equation I use in one of my books. It's called E plus R equals O. And the equation is E, event. There's an event that happens. Plus R is your response, equals O, which is the outcome. So it doesn't matter what the event was. Somebody could attack you. Somebody could do something terrible to you. You could do something terrible to somebody else. The market could crash and you lose all your retirement savings. The United States could elect a crazy person for president, or, whatever. It does not matter what the E is. We always have the ability to respond. And by having the ability to respond, we can always influence the outcome by choosing our response to whatever the event is. So in a relationship, if someone hurts you and your response is to stick it out for 30 years and hope they change and be angry and resentful and toxic,
yeah,
well, that'll get you an outcome, but it may not be the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah.
So the way you use prayer and all that is to just be really still and clear on what you want. Use prayer to be so clear about what your heart's calling is, what that divine life in you wants from any relationship, and then be able to look at what is your ability to respond. How can you respond to get to that goal? Sometimes it's going to therapy. Sometimes it's working with the other person. Sometimes it's leaving. But you can't be afraid and cut off any of those responses. You have to be open to all of them in order for the relationship to work, because sometimes the relationship working looks like it's ending with love.
Yes. That's such a powerful statement. Sometimes a relationship that's working looks like it's ending with love. So there's two things I'm here now, it's in my mind. Okay, the first thing is from a collective, taking this and kind of blowing it out into the collective. When things aren't looking pretty and things are looking messy in the world, and things are kind of falling apart, and people are transitioning because they're being themselves, and being called out in so many different ways. How do we, as a collective, how do we use that equation? Because
go ahead.
Only because do you believe that a few people praying can really make that change?
Oh, yeah. It's been proven. They did an experiment back in the early 90s where and it was sponsored by the co-sponsored by the Washington D.C. Police Department, but they did an experiment in Washington D.C., which in the 90s was the murder capital of the United States. Great thing to call for, right? And they had 400 people of all different faiths come to Washington D.C. for the summer and pray for a reduction in the murder rate. That's all they did. They just prayed every day for the reduction in the murder rate. At first, the chief of police in Washington, D.C. was so skeptical that he said that the only way that there would be a reduction of murders in Washington, D.C. that summer was if a snowstorm hit on the 4th of July. He was so skeptical. But by the end of the study, the Washington, D.C. Police Department became a co-sponsor of it because they indeed saw a 40% decrease in the murder rate in Washington, D.C. that summer. Based on the 400 practitioners, Washington, D.C. has a population of right around 1 million people. So they have 400 people praying for over 1 million for a decrease in the murder rate in Washington, D.C. And it worked. This study that's the one I'm most familiar with because I just live an hour up the road from D.C. But that study has been proven over and over and over again in all sorts of different areas. So in David Hawkins' great work, Power versus Force, he talks about the frequency of various emotions. And one person in the emotion of love is more powerful than hundreds in the emotion of fear.
Yes.
So if we can pray in that, so the event, let's say the event is, and unfortunately I'm in the US, we have more of them than we like, a mass shooting. So if that's the event, well, what response can I have? My response can be to wring my hands and gnash my teeth and say, oh, no, we need stricter gun laws and we need more mental health counseling and we need all these things. All of those may be true. That may be right. But if I'm coming from the place of fear and anger and disappointment in the event, nothing's going to happen. If my response, however, is to recognize that God's in this too.
Yeah.
That I can't see that bigger picture. Maybe these people who are dying for gun violence came here for that very reason as a way to facilitate change. Yes. Maybe that was the contract they signed up for before they ever took form. I don't know. And if I can just stay in that place of realizing that there's nothing wrong here, there cannot be anything wrong here because God's in the midst of this too.
Yeah.
And so based on that, knowing that nothing's wrong here, what can I do to facilitate change and stay open?
Yes.
Then I'll get the outcome I want.
So prayer becomes not only a practical tool for our lives, prayer becomes a structured practice where we're navigating our lives moment by moment with this practice. It's almost like I can see these kind of beautiful sparks coming out from each of us where we're using prayer really using it as a tool, not simply, I think I'll do it. I think I'll do it twice a day because I need to do it twice a day. I'm actually structuring my life and the vision and all of it into this thing called prayer as an ongoing.
Yep.
Yeah, it feels really, it's like waking me up to something different here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer we ever say is thank you, we've prayed enough.
Yes.
You know, if you can stay in that place of gratitude, even when we just see our limited human view. I used to do a talk on, is the world round or is the world flat? And the answer is yes, because it depends on your perspective.
Yes.
If you're a contractor building a building and you need to make sure that you lay a solid foundation. You have to make sure the earth is flat,
Yeah.
flat. But that is a very limited view. That is one little plot of land in the entire earth. If you're an astronaut on the moon, the world is round. And so the question about gratitude and prayer comes from, are you praying from the little plot of ground that is your own small s self, your small c consciousness, and praying for something very limited? Or are you praying from the higher place where you recognize that nothing's wrong, the world isn't dying, there's nothing wrong here. There are certainly choices to be made and things that can be done differently. Absolutely. Yes. But God's in all of it. And so the question is not what's wrong, but the question is, how do we do better? And how do we let God show us? Because everything that happens is just God pointing the way for humanity to make different choices.
So as a historian, you look at the past and you shared with me, yes, you see the bigger picture because you've seen the past and you've studied the past. Bringing that into the future as a futurist, I'm leaping you forwards now.
I know,
isn't it? It's like, oh my gosh, here we are. We're doing the gamut here on the Cosmic Prayer today with Reverend Dr. Judy Morley. I'm just interested in how we can be more of that instrument for change or for transformation and really go beyond where we are right now. I mean, the Center for Spiritual Living Global Vision, which I have sat in prayer with many a time, a world that works for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my okay. So there are things around that I believe can be shifted and changed, and yeah, if a world that works for everyone on some level, the world is already working for everyone. If there is this perfection and wholeness and completeness from a spiritual perspective. So how do we really bring that vision in using prayer on the physical?
Well, what we have to realize is that it works for everyone based on their own consciousness. It is done unto us as we believe. So if I believe the world isn't working for me and I don't create a vision or take any action steps to make it work for me, then it is working for me exactly as I expect it to work for me.
Yes.
So the way, I mean, we have to be careful that what works for me isn't necessarily what works for someone else.
Yeah.
You know, the homeless person who stands at an intersection with a sign every day, that might be the life he wants.
Yeah.
That might be working for him. And so to drive by and say, oh, we need to do something about homelessness is a judgment that we're making from our limited self. So the way that we make prayer create a world that works for everyone is first and foremost, what's the world that works for me?
Right.
I used to have a student that said, I don't care about all this stuff. I want to bring peace on earth. And then he'd come to class and he'd talk about how his teenage boys were always fighting at home. And at one point, probably was not the most ministerial of me, but out of my mouth came, you want peace on earth? You can't even have peace in your living room.
Yeah.
So we can't have peace on earth. We can't have a world that works for everyone until we have a life that works for us.
Right.
So prayer has to start with me getting very clear in prayer about what it is that I want, being silent and still long enough for spirit to show me how to get there, not from the human mind, oh, I got to go get a job, but how to get there in a way that fits in with the life that works for me. And then from that life that works for me, recognize and uplift everyone we talk to and meet, knowing that whatever condition they're in, it's working for them at whatever level consciousness they are.
Yes. Yes. And so our work is so personal.
Always.
So personal. I know as a practitioner, I'm transforming my consciousness, the way that I see it, the way that I am imbued, the way that I connect and command, the way that I commune with the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there is a shift. So coming back to this idea then of really enjoying life and living it fully and loving it and emulating that.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes the world that works for me.
Right.
And then that's not that saying that I am me-centric, because I care about humanity. And yet from that place, I can be of more benefit.
Right. Right. If you think about it energetically, real quick, I know we're running out of time, but real quick, if you think about it energetically, if you're vibrating at the energy of fear and loss and grief, how are you going to bring more love to the world?
Yeah.
You have to vibrate at the energy of love and excitement and gratitude and passion before you can bring it to the world. You can't give someone what you don't have.
Yes.
So it's not being me-centric. The greatest thing you can do for the world is love yourself first. Love yourself enough to bring that love to other people.
Yeah. Dr. Judy, this is an incredible conversation, and I am filled up. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're sharing. And I've put your website up here. We haven't even had I'm going to show it just for a moment, because your site is here and I want people to see what you're doing in the world, and that they can connect with you. If people that feel called to you and your energy and your wisdom, and that they can work with you, particularly women as well, can work with you, leaders who may be drawn to really bringing spiritual practice into leadership and living a full life in all ways. So there's your website, drjudymorley.net. And you do work with women also. So I'd love you to come onto my other show as well, the Women of Power.
I would love that. This has been wonderful, Reverend Laura. This has been wonderful. And yes, my real passion is working with women to help them break out of their socialized roles as nurturers and become nurturing leaders.
Yes, this is what we need, or this is what we're being called, what women are being called to rise into now and to show up as. And
yes,
I'm excited. I'm going to look more through your website, and I wonder if you would share a prayer right now.
I would be happy to.
Would you? That would be amazing. Can I begin? Can I begin the prayer with just an opening and just kind of welcoming and invoking and setting this purpose? What's in your heart for the purpose of this prayer right now?
Just that anyone who has heard these words that you and I have spoken today have the strength and the courage and the intention to stay completely connected to the divine.
This is the prayer. So I'm welcoming us in here, inviting us to close our eyes and be with this breath, breathing in and breathing out, settling into this knowing, as I know, this one power presence that is love, this goddess, God, love, divine, infinite intelligence. That is the thing itself. That is the idea of all of life that is here and present right now, knowing and flowing itself in, as, and through everything. And I feel this, and I know this, and I see this in the birds in the sky and the sea outside of my home here, and the stars and the suns and the moons. And I know that this is God, this planet Earth, Gaia, this Mother Earth, home to billions and billions of beings and creatures and nature and everything human-made and created and designed. This is God. And so I know and accept that this too is me, as this God is in, as, and through, omnipresent, everywhere. So I open up more fully to being this greater expression of the divine, knowing too that that this God is Dr. Judy, that is every being that is watching and viewing this program at any moment, that this is God expressing. And so with this, I am filled with love and light and gratitude as I hand this prayer over to Dr. Judy now, Reverend Dr. Judy.
And so taking these words and knowing that there is no distance, there is no separation of time or space in the one mind. I just accept that all people everywhere, whether they have heard Reverend Laura's and my voice today, whether they hear it in the future, or whether they never hear of us at all, I know that all people are still connected in this divine consciousness because there is no separation. We are truly one. And so recognizing that, I know that when we uplift any part of this divine whole, we uplift the whole itself. And so I just give such grateful thanks in this moment for Reverend Laura and the work that she is doing here, for all of humanity that is down here playing around in the world of effects, trying to figure this out so that they can deepen, we can deepen an understanding of this thing that some people call God, Spirit, Source. I just accept and know right now that our world is at a time that it has never seen before, that there are more people awakening to this consciousness now than there have ever in history. And while some people can see doom and gloom, I see only hope and excitement and passion for the understanding and the knowing that is becoming mainstream, that is becoming part of popular culture, that is becoming just second nature to so many. This knowing that we are one, and this understanding that as we uplift ourselves, we uplift all. And so with such great gratitude for this, for great gratitude knowing that this isn't supposed to be hard, this isn't unpleasant, that as we live in joy, we bring joy to all. And what more could we ask for than joy? And so knowing that joy is our birthright, I just give such grateful thanks for all of this. I let it be. I let go right now, knowing that all is truly well everywhere. So we let it be so, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Thank you. And we breathe this in and know that it is done. And I'm so grateful and appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Laura.
Judy, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been amazing. What a great cosmic prayer. And if you're joining right now or have just caught the end of it, then go back in a minute to the beginning of it and watch it from the beginning because it's a great show. Thank you also to everyone that's been watching at whatever point in time. New Thought Media Network is a global focus ministry with programming like this every single day of the year. So there is the website. And if you feel called to have a look through it, and if you're aligned with the vision, you are welcome to donate if that feels good for you. Thank you again, Reverend Dr. Judy Morley. Bye for now, everybody.